Good morning, Year 2. Welcome to today's maths learning. Today we're going to be building on what you have started to think about and learn about with Mr. Clutterbuck. You've been looking at mixed numbers with Mr. Clutterbuck. These are things like what I have on the screen here, 3 and a half. This tells me that this number has 3 whole things in it, and then it also has a half of a thing as well. So for example, it might be that I have 3 round cookies and then I only have a half of a cookie as well. So those mixed numbers are where we have a whole number and then we have the fraction as well. So we're going to be building on this today, looking at our in-focus task and then trying to have a go at counting in fractions and mixed numbers. Here is today's in-focus task. So we can see here that Amira has bought some rods. I think it might be doweling for an art project. So some wooden rods. You can see she's bought 4 of the same size and then a shorter one. That's what she's bought. Now, Elliot said that Amira has bought 5 pieces. I can see why he thinks that. Hannah has said, no, she's bought less than 5 pieces. I think I can see why she thinks that as well. I'd like you to start this morning by having some time to record what you think Amira has bought, and then have a think about which of these children is correct. Is Elliot right? Did Amira buy 5 pieces? Or is Hannah right? Did she buy less than 5 pieces? I would suggest that you spend some time with the video paused so that you can explore this at home, thinking about what you already know about numbers and fractions, and then see if you can decide who may be right. Now, Amira shared a little bit more information. Oh, sorry, Hannah shared some more information. Amira, she said, bought less than 5 pieces because you cannot call something a piece unless it is the same size. Good point. Is this always true, though? Down here, I have some cookies. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go to a bakery, as much as they try to make sure the size of those cookies is exactly the same, because they have put the same amount of ingredients in, my cookies aren't always the same size. I do get some that are a little bit smaller. And these cookies on my screen, if I put them on top of each other, they're not all the same size. But I do have 3 whole cookies. This would still be represented with the number 3. I have 3 cookies. It's not until my cookies look like this that I could say, well, that is not a whole cookie. I know that cookies are usually round in shape, unless they're, purposely making it this shape. This doesn't look like a whole cookie to me. This looks like I'm getting half of a cookie. So that would only be a fraction of my cookie. Looking at Amira's and what she has bought, I mean, she does have 5 pieces, but Hannah makes a very valid point. One of her pieces is not the same length as the others. So we can say that that one is a fraction of the amount of the others. So let's have a look at this in more detail on the next page, thinking about who could be right. This is what Amira bought. I can see Amira has bought some long pieces. How many long pieces has she bought? Yes, she has 4 long pieces. I can also see she has bought a shorter piece. How many shorter pieces has she bought? Yes, she has 1 short piece. Now, if we were to think about what these pieces are worth, I would argue that these long pieces are the whole length of wood. Which number do we use to represent a whole thing? Yes, we usually use the number 1. So this would represent 1. What would this represent? It would be another 1. It wouldn't be number 2. It would be the number 1, but when we count them together, both of them represent the number 2. So this means 1. This means 1. The third one, what does this mean? It also means 1. It's the same size. And then this one here, yes, that would be another 1. Would this be 1? No, it can't be 1 because it is shorter than the rest. And if we're calling these 1, we cannot say that this is also 1. It's much shorter. Now I got another piece of wood that was the same length as this one. And I can see that if I were to stick it on the end, oh look, both of these together now would make the number 1. Now, having a look at this piece that's coloured in, because that is what Amira actually bought, I could write this as a fraction. How many parts out of how many equal parts did Amira buy? Can you say it with me? She bought 1 part out of 2 equal parts. So we can say that this piece is not 1, but it is actually half, because 1 part out of 2 equal parts is the same as saying half. So if we come back up here, I can say the 4 long pieces, well, they represent the number 1, 2, 3, 4, because 4 lots of 1 makes 4. So I would say the 4 long pieces are 4. The short piece, we only have 1 of them, we have said is half, or 1 part out of 2 equal parts. Therefore, we can say that Amira has actually bought 4 and a half pieces of wood. She bought 4 whole pieces and she bought a half piece. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Is this what you thought at the beginning? We have a look down here. The children have been learning from this too. So Elia also agreed. She bought 4 long pieces and 1 shorter piece. Hannah then realised, yes, that's right. She bought 4 and a half. Now the question asked us earlier, who was correct? So we've shared what we think and what we know about fractions, but we need to come back to what the children said. Now, let's have a think. Elliot said, Amira buys 5 pieces. Having a look at it, technically, Elliot is right. She bought 1, 2, 3, 4 whole pieces, 4 longer pieces, and she bought 1 half a piece, 1 smaller piece. Technically, she did buy 5 pieces. He is right. The problem is he wasn't specific enough because those 5 pieces were not all the same size. So Elliot isn't wrong. He just didn't tell us enough. She did buy 5 pieces of wood, but not all of those pieces were the same size. So he didn't buy 5 whole pieces because we said up here he bought 4 whole pieces and 1 half a piece. Now let's have a look at what Hannah said. Now Hannah said she buys less than 5 pieces. Now if I write the number 5 here, and then if I write the fraction we said Amira had bought, 4 and a half, I know that 4 and a half is less than 5. I'm going to put the less than symbol in. Remember the less than symbol, this symbol is a bit like an alligator's teeth. We would imagine, wouldn't we, that he had some teeth and he's going to eat the largest number. So this means less than. 4 and a half is less than 5. Now because 4 and a half is less than 5, we can say that Amira is right also. She does buy less than 5 pieces. But again, Amira just didn't give enough information, so both children were right. Just both children didn't explain enough about what they meant. It's time for us to reflect on what we've done so far. This represents the rods that Amira bought. We've laid them out on a number line. We had one hole, that's why we reached the number 1. We had another hole, that makes 2. We had another hole, which made 3. She bought a 4th hole, which made 4, and then she bought that little half, which made 4 and a half. Now my question says, how many halves are in 4 and a half? Well, I'm going to ask you, if I just look at this one piece for now, how many halves are inside a whole thing? There's a clue if we look at the denominator, but also this picture, they've shown you how many halves there should be to make the whole. So how many halves make a whole? Yes, 2 halves usually make a whole. So this rod has 2 halves in it, because if I were to chop it in half, I have 2 parts out of 2 equal parts coloured in. That would be the whole thing. There are 2 halves inside. So if there's 2 halves in this hole, how many halves are in this one? Well, that would be another 2. There must be how many in this one? 2 more. How many halves in here? You guessed it, another 2. And over here, I can see there aren't 2 halves here. I can only see one of the halves coloured in. So if I'm thinking about how many halves are in the number 4 and a half, I'm now going to count and add these numbers together. There's 2 halves, another 2 makes 4 halves, then I would have 6 halves, 8 halves, and 1 more than 8 is 9. There must be 9 halves in the number 4 and a half. Let's count in halves. Let's have a look here. Let's just check first. There's 0, there's 4 and a half. They've chopped these rods in half. Do they have 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ruby has proved to us there are 9 halves inside the number 4 and a half. Let's practice counting in halves on this number line, reading the numbers as we go along. These are the numbers we're reading, okay? So we start at 0, 1 half, 1, 1 and a half, 2, 2 and a half, 3, 3 and a half, 4, 4 and a half. Could you hear that pattern? Let's say it one more time, but this time we're going to keep going all the way until we get to the number 10. Try and say it with me. 0, a half, 1, 1 and a half, 2, 2 and a half, 3, 3 and a half, 4, 4 and a half, 5, 5 and a half, 6, 6 and a half, 7, 7 and a half, 8, 8 and a half, 9, 9 and a half, 10. Well done if you were able to keep counting with me. The reason we did that is because today's learning is all about being able to count in halves. So here is our practice for today. These are the sorts of things you may see in your learning when you're doing your independent workbook page. Today you're going to be given some pictures of a mouse. You've got to look at how many holes there are and how many halves there are to be able to write the mixed number. Remember, step 1, when we're writing a mixed number, the first thing we do is to count the holes. How many holes do we have? Well, let's look at this one. 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 holes. Remember, I don't mean holes as in the circles in the ground. That would be spelt differently. This type of holes with a WH means the entire thing. We have 3 entire lengths here. And then number 2, the second thing we do after we've counted the holes is we look at the fraction. Or we count the fraction. Now today we know we're counting in halves. So how many halves can we see here? Well, I have one of them. I have 1 half. I know that the denominator, the bottom number, 2, represents half. If I have one of them, my numerator must be a 1. So let's look at the next one. Can you count the wholes with me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's write the 5 first. Let's start with the whole. Let's not confuse ourselves. Now we're going to look at the fraction. How many halves do we have here? We have 1 half. I know it's a half as well because I can see if I had 2 of those, it would complete the whole. Can you say this one with me? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wholes. And we also have 1 half left over. So you'll be seeing some images. You have to tell me how many wholes and how many halves, writing it as your mixed number. Then some of you could have a go at this challenge afterwards. This isn't in your worksheet, but I wonder if you could challenge yourself to complete the number line, showing me what belongs in these boxes as you count in halves all the way to 10. I'm not going to do that now. That's going to be your challenge once you've finished your workbook page. And this is what your workbook page looks like. Look at that, only 4 questions. Now just remember when you're having a go at this today, remember number 1. Count the wholes. Number 2, count the fraction. That's going to help you remember how to write this mixed number down today. When you've done that, could you please send a picture of your worksheet learning to us? And if you do have a go at the challenge by trying to complete the number line, fantastic, send that as well. I will link this onto your team's assignment so that you can see it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's maths learning. Now go and have a go at your worksheet and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much, Year 2s. Take care.